Har dengan Aiman Azlan. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Aiman, apa khabar?
Waalaikumsalam. Baik, Alhamdulillah. Dr. Ha, apa khabar?
Terus, apa? Hari ini ada buat majlis kesyukuran sikit. Jadi adik-beradik datang pula. So, tapi dah rested lah dah. So boleh. Kan. So Aiman pun tak dengan dekat airport lagi. Airport mana? KLIA 2, KLIA 1 atau Terminal 1?
Saya berada di airport yang tidak boleh beritahu lokasinya,
Okay. Alright.
tapi menuju ke Johor. Esok ada
Oh,
convention. Saya tak ingat nama dia panjang, convention keluarga wanita something something.
Alhamdulillah.
Saya sebagai salah seorang panelis lah.
Pukul berapa flightnya?
Flight saya 9.30, so
Oh,
sempatlah kita bincang malam
okay.
ni.
Baik,
And
okay.
then 9.30 naik pun terbang.
Okay, Alhamdulillah. Alright. So, itulah dengan teknologi ni, kita actually tak ada alasan lah untuk tidak um,
Boleh
memberi input kan. So, dah tahan nak,
sentiasa ada masa, insyaAllah.
ya, lalu kan ada 13 orang dalam Zoom ni. So, terima kasih atas masa yang diluangkan. Ada Adlin, ada AZ, ada Balkis Nabihah, NN Nur Mahira dengan Nurul Farhan Aina, Siti SM. Okay, so kita start dululah dengan tajuk kita. Kali ni tajuk kedua untuk kita punya sesi atau slot Tough Talk. Dan macam biasa kita rasakan benda yang sukar untuk dibincang tapi kena bincang. Dan insyaAllah kita akan bincangkan ni dengan batas respect and trust and balance. Itu yang penting tu. Okay. Agaknya for far too long kita tak bincang benda ni sebab duk kata tabu macam tu. Sekarang ni tak tahu rasa tabu tu jadi alasannya sebenarnya kita sebenarnya yang apa kita bincang hari ni lah tentang sexual vulnerability. So sebelum ni kita bincangkan tentang apa communication, macam how do you communicate kan, kita punya sexual needs and kita punya desire. Dan mungkin kita tak bincangkan tu sebab kita rasa macam benda tu tak manis nak disebut ataupun it's a very personal kind of aspect. Tapi bila Dr. Har sendiri dah jadi doktor ni, dan untuk 2 tahun ni Dr. fokus kepada aspek yang ini sebab doktor ni macam Dr. cakap dengan Iman, aspek sexual history ni relationship ni memang this part of health, holistic health yang doktor kena kena tahu. Jadi so kalau kita untuk clocking tu antara data yang kita kena ada tu macam medical history. Aiman ni ada dah tinggi kecil manis ke tidak kan, biasa dengar kan, ataupun ada allergic ke, pernah ada buat operation ke apa kena. Lepas tu macam kena ambil social history kerja apa semua. Tapi berhenti kat situ je. Padahal ada lagi sexual history. So we all ni macam tak we are being trained and we are being sort of thought that sexual history is part of the whole well-being of the patient. Tapi kita tak tanya. Patient pula dia takkan bagi tahu. Kan? That will be the last thing dia bagi tahu, walaupun itulah komplain utama dia. So macam Dr. Hasni rasa macam mana cara kita nak deal with something yang macam ini keadaan dia. So to me kita kena lead the way. Ini kita ni bukan trailblazing lah sebenarnya, tapi kita kata kita kena tunjukkan that this topic can be discussed with a lot of respect and professionalism kan. Jadi kita kena discuss with professional punya conduct kita lah dengan batas-batas, tapi janganlah terbatas sampai kita tak bincang langsung. And I think dengan Aiman, Dr. rasa sebagai kaunselor yang selalu bincang tentang aspek hubungan ni, so I think this is another perspektif yang kalau Dr. baca cakapnya maybe it's very biological tau. Tapi bila ada Aiman, okay. So Dr. nak minta Aiman dulu mungkin just your input in terms of the topic lah tentang sexual vulnerability tu. Silakan.
Thank you, Dr. Har. So, again, dengan topik yang tough untuk kita nak bincangkan, tapi saya sambut baiklah topik ini untuk dibincangkan secara terbuka macam ni. Kerana it is needed kan, Dr. Har, it is needed. Kerana bila kita masuk sesi sama ada counselling ataupun dengan Dr. Har, sesi dalam bilik doktor lah, benda ni yang keluar, benda ni yang orang sebut-sebutkan. Dan ini yang menjadi satu bentuk kesakitan yang tak dilihat, tak nampak.
Okay.
Kerana kat luar nampak macam okey, tapi rupa-rupanya di belakang tabir ini yang menjadi struggle dia. Dan di manakah tempat untuk mereka nak meluahkan ataupun nak dibincangkan benda ni. Dan salah satu benda yang saya rasa menjadi penyumbang kepada tabu itu adalah orang rasa masalah ini dia seorang je yang hadapi.
Yes, okay.
Yes. So dia rasa macam buat apa aku nak cakap, aku seorang je kot yang rasa macam ni. Atau itu yang pertama. Atau yang kedua, dia rasa masalah ini adalah lumrah perkahwinan. Macam terlewat apa. So kalau you kahwin, inilah dia, you kena terima je.
Okay.
Right? Which is not true. Kerana kalau kita lihat kepada sirah Nabi, sunnah Nabi SAW, aspek sexuality ini adalah benda yang ditekankan. Dan tentang kepuasan, keinginan, benda-benda kita kata kotor ni kan, sebenarnya dalam perkahwinan ia adalah suci dan ia digalakkan kerana kalau zina dapat dosa, maka yang sebaliknya itu dapat pahala, dan pahala yang besar pula tu kan. So bila cakap pasal vulnerability ini, tambah pula dengan culture yang kurang bercakap tentang di rumah ke di luar ke, dan kalau cakap pula cakap dengan keadaan yang bergurau tak kena tempat, dengan cara yang agak immature, maka vulnerability itu menjadi lebih membuat-buat, khususnya bagi mereka yang merasainya, baik lelaki ataupun wanita, baik suami ataupun isteri, di mana vulnerability, saya suka guna istilah yang Brené Brown gambarkan sebagai seorang yang berada di tengah-tengah teater dan kelilingnya ada orang tengok. Macam teater yang bulat macam Colosseum kan, teater tengah-tengah tu, dan dia berada di tengah-tengah itu sedang bertarung dan orang tengok, maka di situ dia terdedah sepenuhnya dengan pandangan-pandangan orang. So rasa terdedah itulah vulnerability. Cuba dalam konteks ini kita nak gambarkan terdedahnya kita kepada pasangan kita yang sepatutnya menjadi the person, the right person and the perfect person untuk kita nak dedahkan semua benda tu. Tapi disebabkan kita ni ialah ada banyak layernya, banyak defense mechanismnya, maka kita angkat defense itu, angkat dinding batu itu. Dengan pasangan yang paling dekat dengan kita pun kita tak nak tunjuk. So dalam sesi-sesi counselling yang saya pernah buat, mereka tiada masalah dari segi physical boundary, sebab dia orang faham lah, okay, bila ada suami isteri, aurat fizikal tu dah tak ada. Okay? So tu tak ada masalah. Boleh, ada hubungan, boleh mengandung, dapat anak, semua tu. Tapi bila kita sembang pasal emotional, quote-unquote emotional aurat lah, let me just use that term, quote-unquote emotional aurat yang sepatutnya bagi suami isteri dah tak ada, yang tu yang masih lagi ibarat macam berselimut. Tak nak tunjuk kepada pasangan dia. Dia rasa vulnerable, tak nak dedahkan benda tu. Walhal dia dah dedahkan benda-benda lain lah. Badan dia dah dedahkan aurat dia, tapi benda-benda lain selain fizikal itu tidak didedahkan. Sebab itulah kita tak nak perbincangan seksual ini hanya terikat kepada fizikal semata-mata dan biologi semata-mata. Kerana dia seiring dengan benda-benda lain. Psikologi, emosi, spirituality, semua itu wajar kita dedahkan kepada pasangan. Kerana itulah yang akan membina trust, safety, security, dan sekiranya berjaya kita bina benda itu dengan pasangan, dia akan membina yang kita katakan sakinah itulah. Kerana kita dah jadi tenang. I have shown you my vulnerability. Saya telah dedahkan saya punya vulnerability saya, tapi you still accept me. You still boleh tolerate me. Kita masih lagi boleh work things out, boleh berbincang, boleh musyawarah. We can still live together in harmony. Di situ datangnya ketenangan. Tapi kalau kita masih lagi sorok-sorok, aku tak nak tunjuklah bahagian ni. Nanti kalau aku tunjukkan, dia tak macho lah pula. Ataupun tak ayu pula kan kalau kita cakap pasal benda ni dengan suami. Maka ketenangan tu tak ada lah. Sebab kita sentiasa wondering, will I be accepted? Will I be loved? Will I be unconditionally loved by my partner and so on. So sexual vulnerability ini walaupun bukanlah topik yang sangat bombastik ataupun sensasi, tetapi di sebalik tabir itu ramai couple-couple yang dah berkahwin is struggling with it. So saya rasa eloklah kita buat walaupun dalam ruang yang kecil, 14 orang ni, 14 orang yang hadir, dia boleh sampaikan kepada another 14 people and it will spread insyaAllah. So this is a small movement with big dreams. So that's the hope lah.
Okey, Aiman teruskan lagi sementara Dr. habiskan azan kat belakang ni. Teruskan lagi.
Azan tak habis lagi. So part of the sexual vulnerability yang saya perasan berlaku dalam kalangan, let's say my followers dululah. Nak kata masyarakat tu mungkin saya punya pengalaman belum cukup lagi, tapi dengan followers yang saya interact with, tambah dengan klien, tambah dengan kita punya customers yang hadir kita punya kelas and so on and so forth, one of the things yang saya rasa paling utama dalam isu sexual vulnerability ini adalah kurangnya ilmu tentangnya. This is very basic things. Kurangnya ilmu tentang benda yang Dr. Har maybe in the medical field, this is like common knowledge, benda yang kita dah tahu, kita dah bagi tahu patient dia ini dia. Benda itulah yang wajar kita umumkan kepada masyarakat, because even the basic things like anatomy, right, and the basic things about different kinds of touching, basic things about foreplay, basic things about it's okay, katakanlah you not in the mood and how do you talk about it. These things are not talked about. Kursus kahwin tu lagilah dia lebih kepada cakap benda-benda on the surface. Tapi bila cakap pasal benda yang basic tentang hal-hal ini yang berlaku di bilik tidur, siapa nak ajar mereka, right? So they are left to their own devices and they are left exploring on their own with little to no guidance. Dan ini yang bahaya. Sampaikan, and I know Dr. Har lagi banyaklah contoh-contoh macam ni kan. Sampaikan, they think, oh macam ni lah kot perkahwinan. Oh tak apa kot kalau aku tak rasa puas because macam ni lah kot perkahwinan. Oh tak apalah kot kalau katakanlah nak tapi tak dapat. Inilah kot perkahwinan. Oh tak apalah kot kalau katakanlah kita bergaduh berhari-hari tak bercakap. Inilah kot perkahwinan. Because like I said in the beginning lah, they think ini masalah aku seorang je kot. So kalau share pun, nanti orang lain tak faham. Ataupun yang lagi common saya dengar adalah takut kerana ini membuka aib. Membuka aib. So bila kita kata we have to talk about it, it doesn't mean yang kita share benda tu dekat Facebook atau share dekat Instagram. Bukan. What we mean adalah talk about it dalam circle yang relevant, right? Seperti mana Quran sarankan kan, kalau you ada soalan tanyalah ahlinya, right? Itu yang kita maksudkan, bukan kita nak menggalakkan kita gosip-gosip dengan kawan-kawan. Tidak. Nobody is telling that. So bila katakanlah ada isu, tak apa, let's meet with a doctor, let's meet with a counselor to say that and to suggest that to a partner. We want to make that as standard seperti katakanlah, oh you demam jom kita pergi klinik. As standard as that. So that's my little dream as a counselor. Bila mana one day orang pergi ke pejabat counselor tu sama je macam pergi ke klinik sebab dia demam. So that's the dream lah. So that's one thing yang saya boleh petik, iaitu lack of just basic knowledge, and they don't know where to get it. They really don't know where to get it.
Thanks Aiman, sebab kita kena start dengan why, kan? So why do we have this kind of discussion? I think I share your dream dia tadi, kan, bahawa satu masa nanti kita tahu that this is as important as bila your physical health yang lain tu. Sakit gigi kena jumpa dentist, sakit demam sehari makan Panadol tak baik lagi, you kena pergi jumpa somebody to maknanya taklah pula every single thing kena terus jumpa, tak, tapi you have to know bila agaknya things requires the third person or the professional assistant kat situ tu kan. Okay, So I think this is part of it. Mudah-mudahan kita diberikan pahala, Aiman, untuk to me desensitize, topik yang selama ni being so much apa orang kata swept under the carpet, disebabkan dia tabu atau tadilah maknanya kita takut kita mendedahkan aib pasangan kita semua. Tapi kalau kita tak ada sikap yang betul tu, dia boleh menyebabkan perkahwinan kita tu sebenarnya kan akan daripada jadi sakinah mawaddah dan rahmah tu dia terbalik pula kan ya. And I think betul lah macam yang kaunselor di JAKIM dan Jawi Dr. Har kat dua area tu dia memang cakap Dr. Har kalau ada peluang bagi tahu tentang kesihatan seksual dan intimasi ni, sebab banyak daripada perceraian tu kalau you pergi kat dia punya punca dia tu memang puncanya di situlah kan ya. Jadi dia macam chicken and egg jugalah, macam mula-mula komunikasi ilmu tak ada, kemudian dia cause problem into the relationship dan intimacy, kemudian dia jadi macam spiral vicious cycle lah kan? Ataupun mungkin disebabkan oleh hubungan tu ada masalah gitu, dan dia sebabkan tak ada kaedah tu, dia jadi adrift lah ya. Makin lama bila dah renggang tu adalah tempat untuk masuk orang ketiga tu kan ya. Jadi lepas tu kita start lah kata yang ni sondul tu lah, yang tu sondul ni kan. Padahalnya I think we better address the real issue lah ya. Okay, so mungkin Dr. Har just nak bagikan macam definition dulu apa dia sexual vulnerability tu. Vulnerability kalau tengok dalam DBP dia kata kerentanan ya, ataupun kelemahan macam tu. Tapi ada satu lagi word saya nak tahan dapat, mempan. Kita selalu dengar mampan kan, tapi mempan, MEMPAN is actually to me lah, bila baca mempan tu it explain vulnerability. Dia macam mungkin yang paling correct. Cumanya mempan kita jarang guna. Jadi sebab tu kita guna kemempanan pun tak faham juga ya. So cumanya kalau boleh Dr. Har katakan, this is actually satu keadaan emosi ya, emosi dan psikologi yang mana kita merasa, sebab dia emosi kan, kita rasa expose, kita rasa tadilah terdedah dekat betul-betul dekat tengah amphitheater tu kan, dekat kita macam seolah-olah semua orang tengok kita begitu, dan dia sebenarnya dia rasa rentan atau dia rasa susceptible, maknanya dia boleh di apa-apakan dan dilukai luka tu. Kalau misalnya dari sudut perubatan you asal kata vulnerable group tu, maknanya yang senang dapat infection kan ya. Maknanya the youngest ataupun yang paling tua, maknanya the extreme of ages tu. Tapi dalam konteks ni dia akan sebenarnya susceptible atau terdedah, that's the word, terdedah kepada potensi bahaya ya, atau sesuatu yang boleh melukakan dia atau mencederakan dia dalam kurungan ni dalam konteks seksual. So this is related to sexual lah. So benda ni boleh ditonjolkan, dia punya symptomatology dia tu adalah rasa tak selamat rasa juga kita rasa macam rasa insecure lah dengan kita punya attractiveness, especially bila kita lihat dengan standard yang ada dekat pornografi kan, dekat filem-filem yang kita tengok dekat Netflix tu contohnya. Dia juga boleh tu tadi, pertama rasa insecure dan kita punya sexual attractiveness tu. Keduanya sebab kita tak cantik, kita tak nampak seksi macam yang dalam tu kan. Yang kedua kita takut adanya penolakan, rejection dan juga dia pula rasa macam boleh ke tidak dia establish this intimacy kan. Dan inilah dia rasa bimbang, resah, risau dengan dia punya performance dalam konteks seksual tu. Semua ni lah kan ya. So macam Dr. Har mungkin nak Dr. Har bagi balik kat Aiman, nak echo juga apa yang Aiman kata ilmu tu, and you are saying that me being a doctor tu, Dr. Har bila buat refleksi lagi, oh yes, that's in the beginning of the marriage tu banyak yang kita pun tak tahu kan, kita pun tak berapa pengalaman, tapi pengetahuan biologi Dr. Har tu dan juga maybe more of this sexuality ni actually prepare me for all this insecurity lah, this vulnerability kan ya. Maknanya my vulnerability, I need to address that. And then tak boleh address seorang-seorang. I need my husband to actually help me there. Tapi I realize juga dia pun ada juga vulnerability yang I need to help him as well, kan ya. Jadi di situ tu kita nampak bahawa ilmu tu dia sebenarnya buatkan kita rasa lebih bersedia dan juga lebih confident untuk hadapi tu. And satu lagi, very early in my life agaknya as a biologist kan ataupun a scientist, I know this is not me alone. Itu yang buatkan kita rasa confident kan, kita kata walaupun macam ni kan, walaupun mungkin orang tak cakap, tapi so the fact that benda tu kita rasa kita bukan sendirian dan I know where to find the answer. Maknanya kalau tak payah jumpa profesional pun lah. Especially masa tu belum ada lagi zaman internet dan juga chat GPT ni. So Alhamdulillah Dr. rasa aspek tu ya sangat dibantu oleh pengetahuan dan ilmu yang betul lah, maknanya ilmu tu menyuluh lah kan sebenarnya. So Aiman, Dr. rasa macam mungkin kita pergi terus kepada how do you handle the sexual vulnerability, because tajuk kita ini facing. Facing satu. Maknanya ada antara kita ni face pun tidak. Dia bila vulnerable aja, syuk aja. Tadi, erect all the wall. Ataupun kalau kita ni macam kura-kura, kita masuk dalam shell kita kan. Jadi bayangkanlah suami pun masuk dalam dia punya cengkerang dia, isteri pun masuk. Habislah kan. Jadi, so how do you suggest and propose how do you handle sexual vulnerability effectively, insyaAllah? Silakan.
Right, so I just want to echo what you just said before about rasa tidak selamat. I think that's a key phrase yang saya dan juga saya minta semua orang ingat lah. So just think about it. Yang your own partner, let's say my own partner kan, my wife, rasa tak selamat dengan saya. I mean, just think about it for a moment. And that sense of vulnerability bahawa I don't know if I share this with you, will I be safe?
Yeah.
If I share my, kita kata darkest secrets ke, ataupun kita kata this side of me yang not even my family knows of, like nobody knows of, will I be accepted? Will I be safe? And I still remember, it keeps on echoing in my head what my psychology professor once said about acceptance. And he said, by the way, he's a scientific guy. He's not a spiritual guy at all. But what he said is, to me, is very high in spirituality, where he said that if you can find somebody who can see the most ugliest side of you and still accept you, that's like, he didn't use the word lah, tapi macam satu nikmat lah that you cannot describe. And this is one of the treasures of life lah, lebih kurang. And I still hold what he said to my heart lah, kerana I do believe yang in terms of human connection, the deepest, most profound one is the one where you can literally show your whole self, and including the part where you rasa most vulnerable to, talking about, sexual vulnerability included in that, and the person still look at you and say, I still accept you, I still love you, and you are still my partner. But this is the punya punchline tu. In order to do that, and in order to get that, you have to first langkah this hurdle. Yeah.
Okay. Alright. I think Dr. Har ambil kat situ sekejap, Aiman. Maksud dia kan macam, I think kalau perasan dalam dua slot kita ni, the overarching premise is actually building trust and respect. Kan? Maknanya macam itulah kan, sampaikan kita rasa itu sebenarnya hubungan kita dengan pasangan kita tu sepatutnya tak ada apa-apa pun pelindung dah. Macam mana juga physically Allah angkat aurat kita tu, tak ada aurat pun dengan pasangan kita tu. Sebab itulah sebenarnya apa yang patutnya kita macam you feel very exposed tu. Cuma maybe sebelum Aiman sambung terus, Dr. rasa it has to start with you dulu. Maknanya Yang kita punya masalah sekarang ni agaknya kita nak tunggu orang tu dulu expose dia punya ni, baru kita nak expose juga kan, sebab kita takut nanti bila kita expose dia terkejut and dia lari. So that is another fear in vulnerability tu kan ya. Nanti kita go through what is it that we feel so vulnerable about kan ya. Tapi maybe Aiman just continue dulu with this first part of handling it effectively tadi tu. Silakan.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Har. Thank you. Itu pengumuman.
So we know where you are lah. Dengan pengumuman tu pun kita tahu lah
My
where
whole
you are.
train of thought tu memang
Okay. Jadinya memang so basically kita memang kena ada acceptance towards ourselves dulu kan. Barulah kita lebih mudah nak being vulnerable. And that's why lah baru kita dah faham sekarang kenapa pernah baca somewhere vulnerable is sexy. So, what about it? Dan sebenarnya dia itulah, kalau sexy which is actually sexual attractive, excuse me, sexually attractive lah tu nama dia, sexy tu kan. Jadi rupanya when you are vulnerable, you actually have trusted in that the other person. So you have put your trust in the other person that I'm going to show you who I am, but I hope you don't run away. And then that person pula rasa, oh no, I'm not going to run away. In fact, this is the one that attract me towards you. Tu lagi best lah kan. Kat situ tak ada. So we don't have to have this talk tonight. Kalau macam tu. Yeah, Simon, terus before the next announcement. Silakan. Ada lagi? Okay.
Dia nak boarding for the next slide. Not my slide, but the next slide.
Tak apa. Alright.
So my train of thought memang akan menghala ke building trust lah. Tapi I think most people yang dengar kita cakap ni pun tahu trust is important, but how do you build it? You build trust by taking risk. You build trust by taking the risk of exposing yourself and the risk of being rejected. And that's the toughest part about building trust. Sebab nak tak nak, you have to langkah that halangan tu. There's no shortcut, there's no way around it. Orang tanya, like, ada tak pil yang kita boleh telan, ataupun ada tak tips. There's no tips other than you have to show yourself. You have to show, and then tengoklah dia terima you ataupun tidak. And that's the part yang tough, because if you show yourself and dia tak terima, it's going to be very painful. But if you show yourself and dia terima, it's going to be very heaven-like lah. That's the sakinah part too, because sakinah cannot happen. Sakinah cannot happen unless and until you are fully vulnerable, exposing yourself, and then the other person accepts you. And
putus lah Aiman. Putus sikit.
That person pun struggle juga. When we have this two-way vulnerability, that's when one of the things that I try to do, because you mentioned like how can is I start to talk about this before marriage. Not just tell me what you want. No, but go deeper than that. To talk about feelings, to express your feelings properly, to explain how you feel properly. Pasal bahagian tu pun Dr. Har, ramai kita fail. And I say kita, including myself, because we're not trained. We're not trained to talk about feelings, especially when you talk about gender differences. Guys, they talk about feelings less than ladies. However, when you talk about marriage and the institution of marriage itself, you have to talk about feelings. There's no shortcut around it. And this is where some people might, just end the argument there and kata, mengarut lah, tak apa lah. Tak feeling pun boleh je. Kita tahan. And that's the thing I want to address juga. You theoretically, you boleh bertahun for, let's say, 30, 40 years without talking about feeling. And that has been proven. I have seen couples yang mungkin dah berkahwin lama, but they don't talk about feelings. And they bertahan. But itu je lah, dia tahan. You get what I mean? Dia tahan. But they don't get the sakinah part, mawadah warahmah part. They get just tahan. Tahan je. Up to a certain point, it's quite sad for me to say this, but Dr. Har, you know this to be true. Ada yang kahwin lama ni, like belasan tahun sampai puluhan tahun, waiting for the day their partner or themselves pass away je. Right? Either that or waiting for their children to be old enough, independent enough, they all go out of the house and then we get divorced. This is true. So we don't want to talk about just tahan kahwin, nak bertahan, like tahan for years and years and years and years. We want to talk about tahan at the same time quality relationship. We really put sakinah. Is this really disturbing? I'm just checking.
Tak apa, boleh cakap. Finish your sentence dan nanti over.
Boleh ya? Okay.
Okay, dah tu.
So I really want people to understand yang kita bukan the 30 years kahwin kan, 40 years kahwin, kita clap, kita kata congratulations, which is true, it is a type of success. But what kind of 30 years have you experienced? What kind of 40 years have you experienced? Have you ever been vulnerable with your partner in those 30 years? Ada yang 30 tahun belum lagi get to a point of vulnerability because they've been keeping it in for so long. And it's sad because you witness these things and you know there must be something more. So learning how to communicate feelings, guys especially, because you are the imam of the family, you set the tone for the whole family, you set the culture of the family, you have to make it acceptable, encouraged sunnah in your family, that everybody in this family, you are safe. Under my leadership, you are safe. You can talk about feelings, you boleh tak puas hati, you can say these things, but I will guide you macam mana nak cakap dengan cara yang proper. Let's do it in a proper way supaya kita tak, bergaduh besar-besar and kita tak meretakkan hubungan and things of that nature. But we have to allow for these things to happen. And this is what I see from an institution point of view, to learn how to speak your emotions, to learn how to express your feelings properly. And even in ta'aruf session pun, Dr. Har, many people that I coach, they struggle with this. They struggle. Tapi bila saya tanya, do you want your partner to accept you? Dia kata, yeah, I want my partner who accept me for who I am. Well, if you want that, you have to show who you are. That's the weird thing. Semua orang nak diri dia diterima. Tetapi you don't show yourself yang you nak orang terima tu. So you can't langkah that part. So that's one thing that I would like to stress. Tak nak bagi tips yang banyak. This properly will help a lot in the process. Really, from a psychological point of view, counseling point of view, just talking about feelings ni saja pun will help a lot.
Okay. Right. Thanks Aiman. Maknanya memang agaknya itu yang buatkan kita sangat vulnerable pun ketika kita kena acknowledge feeling kita kan, and that including feeling yang kita rasa mungkin bila orang tahu tu, alamak, orang punya itu yang buatkan kita takut nak express tu kan so I think now let's address the what is actually the common fear when we talk about sexual vulnerability. So, sebabnya vulnerability tu is sangat dekat dengan takut tadi kan, kita fear of being exposed tadi tu. So Halizah listkan ni, satu kita takut kena reject so yang tu satulah agaknya dia nampak kita ni, tapi nanti bila dia nampak kita ada eczema kat sini lah, that's contoh yang fizikal kan, itu belum lagi yang dalam-dalam tu kita rasa kita risau sangat kita punya pasangan akan reject kita dan tak reciprocate kan dengan apa yang kita ada tu. So Sebab tu kita reluctant lah nak macam open up emotionally. Keduanya kita takut about all this uncertainty and vulnerability tu sendiri. Okay? Dia macam, yes, vulnerability is the overarching theme, tapi dalam tu sendiri is takut yang itu pun becoming paralyzing in a way. Ya, kita takut yang nanti bila kita terlebih expose ke, and then kawan tu dia macam alamak, ya, expectation dia tu. Kita tak tahu sama ada kita meet ke tidak expectation tu yang buatkan kita vulnerable. Yang ketiga, kita takut kena tinggalkan pula. This is another. This fear of abandonment, dia rasa anxiety sikit. Bimbang kalau misalnya partner dia know this part of you, agaknya dia and this is tadilah, dia tak match dengan apa yang dia nak. So this will make the other person not fully invested in that relationship, kan, satu. Yang keempat, fear of judgment. Tu satu juga lagi, especially kalau you have been living throughout your life being criticized and judged. Kan? So you pun akan kata, okay, definitely my partner, my spouse is going to judge you. Okay, so you know lah how unsexy it is being judged. Kan, ya? Especially kalau dia compare pula, why you are not like that, why you are not that like this person, kan. Kalau dia pun handsome tak apa, tapi tapi dia ada judgement tu, kan, ya. Yang kelima, kita fear loss of control. Ini Dr. perasan, especially when you have been very independent, kan, you don't really have to depend on other people or really bother about what other people think about you. Suddenly you are married and then here you are. You have to at least come up to that person's expectation. So you lose control tau. Kan? Lepas tu yang keenam, some people sebab dia tak biasa dengan being expressive and intimate, so that idea about having had to being close to person tu, kan, too close pula tu, kan, yang itu pun sendiri buatkan I tak katalah sampai fobia, tapi biasalah, maknanya dia akan increase all the heart rate, the blood pressure, when you are stressful lah, kan. So bila dekat dengan pasangan tu sendiri, kan. And then fear of performance, especially you are a perfectionist lah ke, kan. And then I think benda ni dia bukannya stand alone, dia berkait-kait lah, macam fear of performance tu, maybe fear of being judged juga, kan, ya. Fear of dependency, this is interesting. Maknanya macam you takut nanti you become too dependent on the person, kan, ya. Macam suddenly, especially again kalau you baca where this comes from, dia sama dengan control juga. You have been independent, ya, tapi suddenly, of course, Dr. perasan first thing when I got married to my husband is that I must allow myself to depend on him. Because I'm an independent woman. This is coming from a woman, like Aiman. What makes us vulnerable is that when we cannot fend for ourselves, and then kita rasa bila kita sendiri ada gaji kita banyak lagi daripada husband, you feel you feel invincible, formidable, macam tu lah. Suddenly bila you kahwin, you have to depend juga kat dia, kan? So that some people really have issue with that. Kemudian fear of change. Ni especially I realise bila mula kahwin tu, dulu kita fikir pasal diri kita je, kan, suddenly kena fikir pasal that person. And then suddenly pregnant pula, kan, and this sexual intimacy and relationship and intercourse can actually cause you to be pregnant, and then alamak, there's so many changes after that. And of course there is also fear of past trauma. I think this is a bit ni sangat, orang selalu play yang this one, yang macam kalau you tak establish intimacy tu because kita ada macam abuse, ada sexual assault ke sebelum ni semua. But apparently that's not really a major issue. Kan? When you talk about vulnerability yang biasa. So can you imagine kalau misalnya benda yang lain pun kita vulnerable, but when you have this kind of past trauma, it just perpetuate the whole, the whole issue lah. So I think when you understand this here, Dr. rasa dia jadi crucial bila you talk about it. I hope now, kita ada berapa orang ni, 23 orang ni, when maybe following this discussion ni, kata, I think I'm going to face this, address this, tapi how? Kat mana nak start? I would suggest we start talking about our fear. And then I kan sebenarnya takut tau. Katalah you dah kahwin 2 tahun, masa mula kahwin tu I takut sangat you Macam kalau datang sini, dah tu kan, Alhamdulillah, apa ustaz ni, mesti pakai, dia tidur tu pakai baju Melayu, kancing sampai kat ujung tu. Saya rasa macam mana. Of course, coming from all girls school, so sebenarnya kan baca Mills and Boons lah, dia all this romance novel. The worst thing that I think lagi ni is having a man who lie beside me fully dressed. Contohnya lah kan. Tapi, so, but those are the things yang I discover, oh taklah ustaz ni tak macam tu lah, kan. And then, of course, tapi I thought about it. I said, you know what, I expect you, macam ustaz ni kena gini kan. And then we laugh at it lah. Tapi agaknya talking about fear tu, benda yang dah settle, kita gelak lah. Tapi benda yang belum dan actually now is causing to some extent that estrangement that you experience in this relationship, kan? Maybe those are the things you need to address dulu. I would put it like this analogy ni. It's like this rough edges, these spiky things that will prevent you from getting closer, because it keep on pricking you, tau. So you might want to talk about it. And then, all the other person pun ada fear yang sama juga kan. What, kira macam, kan kita akan rasa foolish juga because we were actually fearful of the same thing. Kita tak cakap, and then we thought that, it's just us kan. Yes, Aiman, you want to take up from there, insyaAllah? Okay, ada 15 minit lagi ni.
So
We will stop exactly at 9 so that you can actually board the flight. Okay.
I think if we were to go a bit more practical, I know some of the people yang masuk ni like baru kahwin, maybe like within the first 5 years, mungkin baru masih lagi dalam fasa early adaptation stage. So maybe the expectation adalah, okay, if I become vulnerable tu dia macam one shot tau. Maksud dia, I become vulnerable with you, you accept me, and we become happily ever after. But that's not the reality. The reality is to build trust adalah satu proses yang berpanjangan tau. Dia macam trust is built and maintained over time. And throughout that maintenance stage tu akan adalah benda-benda yang mungkin rosak, kena tukar, things like the same way you maintain a house. A house tu, just because dia dah siap dibina, doesn't mean you lepas tangan. The same way when you build trust. Trust when it's built, you have to maintain. And dalam proses tu akan ada naik turun dia. So, I'll give you an example. Say you want to be vulnerable with your partner malam ni. Right? You want to sit down and talk about it. There's a chance yang dia akan kata, apa abang puan terbiak ni? Tak pernah pun cakap-cakap pasal benda ni, tiba-tiba cakap pasal benda ni. You will get hurt. You have to, jangan pula tiba-tiba, oh aku dah vulnerable dah, dia tak terima, aku shut down teruslah. No, you have to keep on following the process, because part of the process adalah experiencing the pain. I know dia tak seksi langsung cakap pasal benda ni, but it's part of the process, and you have to express your pain itu kepada your partner, and your partner has to feel it, supaya dia rasa macam, oh I didn't know abang rasa macam tu, I thought abang macam nampak macho keras je kan, macam tak ada perasaan, right? I didn't know that my words hurt you. And you have to tell your partner, what you just said just now actually hurt me. And when you do that, so suddenly your wife nampak this side of you dia tak nampak sebelum ni, and that builds the bond and the trust. And when you start to share, dia akan buka gelanggang for her to share pula. Jadi yang kata-kata fear tu lah, right? So I can give one small tiny example of what happened between my wife and I lah. So we were in KL at that time, and ada kawan nak pinjam kereta. Okay, ada kawan nak pinjam kereta. And waktu nak bagi kunci dekat kawan tu, I macam jeling lah dekat my wife, Mira, okay ke nak bagi dia pinjam kereta ni? She didn't say anything. I thought macam, okay lah kot. So I gave the key, and then na'udzubillah, she got into, this friend of ours got into a tiny accident lah. Nobody got hurt apa ke, tapi tiny accident. So my car got a bit accident kat tepi pintu tu. Long story short, we went home and talked about it, and then she expressed yang sebenarnya dia rasa tak selesa nak bagi pinjam kereta tu kat kawan kami ni. And I said to her, lah ya ke? Abang rasa benda yang sama. I felt the same thing. But we didn't talk about it in the moment. Pasal rasa takut nak cakap. Right? Takut nak cakap. We're afraid to be vulnerable. Right? So that was a lesson, even though it was kind of an expensive lesson juga lah. For us, not good. Nobody say anything, okay lah kot. No, that's not the case. There's a lot happening inside a human being psychologically, emotionally. Even somebody yang you dah like at that point yang insiden yang berlaku ni, kami dah kahwin 11 tahun. That's a long time. So we know a lot about each other already. But even then, we are still in the process of, being vulnerable. It has to start with you, betul Dr. Hai. It has to start with you. Susah macam mana sekalipun, you have to buka gelanggang. Kalau saya bias kepada lelaki lah. A man has to start kalau saya lah. But untuk Dr. Har, mungkin Dr. Har kata wanita should start. Either way, if you are listening to this, you should start. Okay, partner can be alone, right? Can be alone, and we can sit down and talk about things. And kalau katakanlah, tapi every time nak talk to dia tak available, you have to tell your partner, can we spend 30 minutes alone together, no phone, anything, I need to talk to you. That alone is enough untuk partner kata, oh, this is something, letak phone ke tepi. Tapi sebab kita tak cakap, so kita nampak, katakanlah partner kita tengah baca buku, ataupun tengah tengok movie kan, kita rasa macam, oh, dia busy, mungkin not the right time kot. Ask, would it be okay if we spend this time right now for 15 minutes talking about something? I need to talk to you about something, right? So you buka gelanggang tu, now things become more focused, in context. So your partner pun tahu macam, oh, this is something, I put things aside. So if you just ask, it will happen. Masalahnya kita nak benda tu jadi spontaneous. It does not happen spontaneous. Even, sexual relationship shouldn't happen spontaneously. You should plan for it. Especially bila you dah, ada anak and things like that, right? You should put it, bukan nak kata like you schedule macam to exact sangat. No, it doesn't mean that. It means yang before the act happen, you dah ada, what we call for it to happen eventually tu during that time of day. So the vulnerable talk we're having ni pun kena plan juga. It shouldn't macam tunggulah bila ada masa, tunggulah bila that masa will never happen kalau you buat macam tu. You have to plan for it. So right now, you can with your partner just kata, how about now? Can we do it now? Anak dah tidur, right? Let's try now for 10 minutes. Talk about our fear. Let's talk about like when we are in the bedroom, what are some of the things yang I'm thinking of that you don't know, right? What are some of the things that I feel I'm doing wrong with you, right? Macam lelaki kan, maybe dia rasa macam, saya takut that I'm not enough for you. Saya takut, right? Maybe wife you pun rasa macam tu. And from there, you ada this similar fear yang selama ni you tak tahu. Oh, I didn't think you had the same fear. Well, you never thought about it. Seru kan? Dr. Har, nak tunggu seru kan? Let this be the seru lah.
Seru tak tahu bila sampai.
Let this be the seru.
Okay.
Dah masuk dah talk ni kan? Dah dengar kan? Okay, this is the seru lah. Okay.
So there's 23 people ni mungkin, Allah pilih lah sebenarnya. This is not by coincidence sebenarnya kan. Ada satu soalan sebenarnya, Aiman, kita address yang tu dulu. And I think this might be responding to what you said, discussing before marriage. So dia kata, perlukah kita vulnerable and transparent about everything before marriage? You want to answer that?
Oh yeah, sure. This is something that I get asked jugalah.
Yes.
From a premarital point of view, ada orang kata, oh kalau macam tu, like, sebelum kahwin pun nak kena bincang pasal sexual preferences lah, pasal, saya ada tai lalat dekat belakang bahu saya ni. No, we're not saying that. What we are talking about, what Dr. Har and me, what we're talking about adalah in the context of marriage. But before marriage, what you should be clear about are your principles prinsip-prinsip yang kita pegang, your matlamat perkahwinan. So yang tu pun, believe it or not, some people feel vulnerable nak bagi tahu. Like for example kan, you rasa vulnerable nak bagi tahu yang niat saya nak kahwin ini adalah kerana ini. Itu pun dah vulnerable dah. Nak bagi tahu niat. Right? So that's when you start practicing big stuff and intimacy stuff. Yeah, you don't talk about things that related to aurat. You don't talk about that, but you talk about what you believe, what are your aspirations, right? What are your principles and the things that you hope for in the marriage. Talk about that, right?
Okay.
Sebab ada manusia yang dia takut nak cakap niat dia. Dia takut nak bagi tahu niat dia yang sebenar nak kahwin sebab takut bunyi skema, takut bunyi macam bunyi macam aku ni cakap bunyi macam ni nanti kan orang kata klise macam-macam kan. That is also vulnerability. Itu vulnerability on a very like tiny level, but that's where it starts. And if you allow that to gain momentum from that tiny thing, it becomes bigger. You become more afraid of things yang lebih besar daripada tu lagi later on.
Right.
So you can start right now. Jangan takut. Kalau dia kata, wish you ni macam dah Islamik sangat ni, aku tak nak. And you are rejected because of that, good. Because you have trained yourself to be honest, and then this particular calon tak terima your honesty. So that's good. Now you know this person is not for me.
Not too late kan, bila dah kahwin tu baru you get to know this, dah susah dah kan. Okay, Aiman, kita ada lebih kurang 4 minit lagi. So Dr. Har mungkin dia kata H dah kata okay, faham, terima kasih. Dr. Har punya take on this memang kita mungkin tak cakap sampai yang detail tu lah, but again we have to sort of be on the same page, khususnya dari sudut niat berkahwin tu. So memang kita tak boleh assume lah, memanglah kahwin sebab nak ada sexual intercourse tu kan yang menghalalkan benda yang haram tu. Tapi dia bukan macam tu saja. Kita kata okay, because of that, since this is something I tak pernah experience, memang pun kita tak pernah experience pun sexual intercourse tu. Kita dah mana zina dulu kan sebelum tu, tapi and because of that, I tahu theory. I try to equip myself with all the knowledge. But again, bila kita sampai kat practical tu nanti, I'm sure I need your help to actually, and I know you are as vulnerable as I am. So kalau misalnya tadi lah macam Aiman kata, kalau man ni dia senang vulnerable macam yang Aiman cakap tu, kita tak ada masalah dah man. Tapi sebab tak macam tu. So, to me agaknya bagi wanita where we are more mungkin lebih mudah nak expresskan emotion kita, I think this is where we come in and say that, you know what, I'm feeling vulnerable, but I'm sure you are feeling that as well. But you know what, in this marriage, insyaAllah kita akan handle together. Ada nak tanya, cumanya want to be perfect. Oh lama. Okay, kita sebenarnya ada 2 minit lagi. Aiman, you have to be starting to board the flight now? Macam mana? Okay, boleh want to be perfect, boleh tanya, cepat-cepat type kat situ. Oh my god, dah ada dah. Kalau soalan ni kurang manis, saya selalu ragu-ragu kalau saya dah cukup beri kepuasan saya kepada my wife, tapi di sini tak tahu dan tak pernah experience orgasm or climax. Tapi kalau saya nak refer pada bacaan umum, saya macam tak sure benda tu related ke dengan my wife, cause badan orang lain kan. So how kita nak figure out benda ni sedangkan both of us are clueless about that. I think it might not be too nak masa yang cukup pun untuk bincang.
Right.
So you can either buat appointment dengan Aiman. I think this is a husband kan. Thank you for your questions. It's not easy to ask these questions. Dr. Har sendiri pun ni bukan nak promo my clinic ya. I ni jenis tak pandai nak promo ni Tapi I have my clinic dekat Anur every Tuesday. Tapi this month memang dah full lah. Kalau nak pun maybe next month ke apa. Tuesday petang pukul 2:30 sampai pukul 5 lah macam tu, where we can actually discuss this. But I will actually talk to your wife dulu kan. And then tapi kalau you datang sekali, that will be very good because we can discuss together. Especially when both of you are clueless. So I think this can be, tapi biasalah this become a consultation kan. And then Dr. Har pun tak nak cakap-cakap atas angin gitu aja kan. So So it's up to you. Sebenarnya kita mungkin tak dapat nak bincang kat sini, minta maaf ya. So tapi this is a very common question. Ini nak beritahu you are not alone in this. Kan? And cumanya Dr. kata kena sort out this problem sebab expectation kita berbeza-beza dan Dr. nak closekan macam ni. Bila kita tak samakan, tak kita tak being expressive and our sexual communication is not open enough and we are not trusting each other and yelah kita takut, sebenarnya kita takut kita disrespectful but sebenarnya tidak kan. So you might need a professional person in between you, so maybe you can choose untuk bincang perkara ni rather than just biarkan saja sebab nanti I think women nowadays pun Aiman, nak bagi tahu ni, we are more empowered now, so we know what we want. And then kalau husband pula jenis yang tak dapat nak address that issue, and then dia jadi macam dia it can turn ugly juga. And then mulalah husband tu feel, yelah kan bila ni you jadi macam your self-esteem and everything. So dia tak boleh perform sexually tau dengan wife dia yang dia rasa sangat demanding ni. Now if it stop there tak apa, tapi I have handled a few cases where the husband punya reaction is by having a extramarital affair. And bila kat situ, dia rasa dia boleh perform kat situ because that women yang dia ada tu just, and then this one night stand tau, dia bukannya falling in love, dia just nak tunjukkan yang dia sebenarnya boleh perform, and then dia tak boleh perform dengan wife dia tu sebab dia rasa wife dia very intimidating. Kan, so dia jadi, and then wife tu pula dengar pula dia ada extramarital affair. Can you imagine tak jadi macam mana dia? Kan, so I think benda ni itulah maknanya nampak benda ni memang kita kena address. Cumanya want to be perfect ni, satu, don't be perfect. Kita bukan perfect. Kita want to be perfect but will never be perfect. In fact, that imperfection is actually the beauty sebenarnya, where you are vulnerable, and that's actually the sexiest part of you. So don't be perfect, sebab kalau perfect sangat pun jadi tak seronok. Kan? And then I think I'm sure Aiman dan Tahar offer that way, but you don't really have to come to us sebenarnya kan, banyak lagi. So I think we have to let Aiman go, especially dah 92 minit. Kan dia tertinggalkan terbang. So thanks Aiman for your time. Yeah. Thanks everyone. We are going to do this every month lah ya, insyaAllah. Dan mudah-mudahan Allah berikan kita, especially Dr. Har dengan Aiman, doakan we can terima kasih Dr. Har and Sir Aiman gitu kan. Okay. So mudah-mudahan kita dapat perlahan-lahan facing our vulnerability, and then we start to acknowledging our own emotion and become sexier to one another, insyaAllah kan ya. Okay, itu saja dulu. Terima kasih Aiman. Thanks everyone. Ya, kita jumpa lagi
Terima
bulan depan
kasih
insyaAllah.
semua.
Okay.
Terima kasih
Safe,
Dr. Har. InsyaAllah
yeah,
jumpa
safe flight
bulan depan.
Aiman. Okay. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.